moment, President Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron will give formal remarks after their bilateral meeting. It comes at the end of the president's 5-day trip to France, which has thus far focused on commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day, but which has now shifted to addressing modern-day challenges and conflicts. Back here, according to Politico, President Biden and his administration are now working to remedy progressives' frustration over his newly signed executive action to tighten border security. The president's moves, which would temporarily shut down asylum requests once the average number of daily encounters tops 2,500, was met with backlash from both Republicans and some Democrats, of course, for very different reasons. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Greg Casar of Texas. He is a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and whip for the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on.
So, sir, just your your first initial thoughts when you found out about this executive order. It's my understanding that the White House did a round of, calls specifically to members of Congress and a number of progressive allies to give them a heads up of what the president's executive order was going to be. Executive action.
Yeah, and we know that this has been building up and potentially coming because it's my first term in the United States Congress. I'm sitting here in San Antonio, Texas, where we've welcomed so many thousands of immigrants here over the last few years. And we've seen how the Republicans here in my first term have covered up for every failure of theirs by pointing to some vulnerable group of people. And right now, they're especially trying to pick on poor and desperate families that are fleeing violence and desperation, especially from Latin America. And I think that they've been setting up this trap that unfortunately President Biden has been pushed into with this executive order. And so my first reaction has been that we need to provide better alternatives, a more progressive vision for why we need a better immigration system rather than falling into the Republican trap of this order, which actually makes immigration less legal. This order actually closes legal pathways, restricts legal pathways to migration, which is the opposite of the direction that we should be going in.
So, Representative, how do you reconcile that with the vast majority of Americans who have an opposite view of what you just described? They do not have a progressive view of immigration policy. They have a more restrictive view of immigration policy. And the president is trying to walk a very, very fine line here, given that neither the Congress nor prior administrations have done squat on the border. So it now rests on his desk in the face of a very contentious election against a demagogue who wants to round people up and ship them somewhere outside of the United States. He doesn't care where. And the American people seemingly are applauding that because they're giving him, Biden's rival, the upper hand on immigration policy. So how does the president walk that line? And you're saying if this is not the way to walk it.
You have made some really important points, and I'm going to try to tackle just a few of them. But first of all, I'm a supporter of the president's, and Donald Trump, of course, has been the most anti-immigrant president, not just in modern history, but frankly, as long as anyone can remember. And so we have to be so strongly opposed to his presidency. And I, of course, do not enjoy disagreeing with my own president on this executive order. The problem is Republicans in the Congress have spent as much of their time as possible keeping the border and the immigration system as broken as possible. And of course, the average American disagrees with seeing these difficult images on the border, seeing people stuck in lines, stuck in camps. They're not being an orderly process. But it has been Republican officials that have caused that. So they're the arsonists, and they try to blame President Biden and congressional Democrats, the firefighters, for the flames that they have set. And so instead of falling into the trap the arsonists have set up, we should go to your question of, well, what would the American people truly support? Where should we go? One, more legal pathways so folks can legally apply to come here, because I actually believe that most Americans do not disagree with many progressives on immigration. They just want to see a more legal and orderly system. So we need more legal pathways, not fewer. And second, we actually should try to find ways to reduce some of that burden and resource strain on border communities. This order was not going to reduce the number of people that are getting pushed out and displaced from Latin America. Immigration doesn't start on the border. It starts in their home countries. So we have to have an actual conversation about why are there record numbers of people being pushed out of their homes. That's why I've announced that I'm drafting legislation to address the way our sanctions policies in Venezuela are pushing folks out of their homes without resulting in democracy there. How we need to change the policies that leave Latin American countries in crushing debt and in violence. So we need to stop contributing to pushing people out of their homes before we blame these asylum seekers for fleeing desperation, especially as we recognize D-Day, where we fought for these American values. And we learned in World War II that we shouldn't be turning people away from violence and destruction. And that's when we set up these asylum laws that we should be protecting.
Congressman Cassatt, I have about a minute left, but I want to make sure that we get to this, which is there is reporting that the White House, in addition to all of this, is looking at the possibility of parole in place for undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. If you ask me, that is a political layup. It is about keeping American families together. Your counsel to the White House, as they suggest a series of executive actions of authorities that would, in fact, enhance and benefit immigration in this country.
We've got to get that done. I appreciate you bringing that up so much. We remember when President Biden was running for re-election, his announcement protecting Dreamers and trying to protect their parents as well, how important that was for the Latino community and for our economy and for the campaign. President Biden needs to put forward these positive vision for immigration and sign positive executive actions. I think it's the right thing to do, both morally and politically.
Congressman Greg Cassatt of Texas. Congressman, thank you.